We love what is going on in cross country at the moment. The racing in both short course and XCO has never been this good before. The courses are getting more and more technical too. So as a result of that, bike design has been going through the roof. So in this video, we are going to be looking at the hottest cross country and down country bikes available. Now, traditionally in cross country racing, there's been a fair mix of hardtail bikes and full suspension offerings. But due to the tech nature of A, this channel, and B, where cross country has really been advancing, we're going to stick to full suspension bikes in this video. And naturally, there are far too many to just do a big list style video. So we're going to pick the top 5. And in no particular order, we're going to start right here. Right, the Specialized S-Works Epic Evo. Now the Epic is well known as their ultralight, ultra efficient cross-country platform running on 100mm travel. But the Evo model is what they kind of do through their other models in a range like the Stump Jumper and stuff, where they basically have a more progressive option, and this is the bike. Now yes, you could race cross-country on it, you could do down country on it, whatever you want to interpret that as, or you can just have this as a super light trail bike. Now this is the Evo on screen, and I think you'll agree it's a pretty special looking bike. It's running the FSR system, so it's the 4-bar linkage that by now Specialized have absolutely mastered. It's a very, very active suspension platform, and it's very neutral in terms of anti-rise and anti-squat. So you pedal, that thing goes. You hit the brakes, your suspension still works. It's a really, really versatile platform. And as a result, Specialized have dedicated their bike design to this platform for so many years now. The bike's got a carbon fiber construction, and as you might imagine, being part of the Evo series, has slightly more radical geometry than conventional cross-country bikes. Now, looking up front here, you have a 66.5-degree head angle. Considering that many cross-country bikes are hovering nearer 70 degrees, that's actually pretty wild. Seat tube angle is 74.5, so it's a bit more familiar with cross-country bikes. And that's more reflective of being able to get in and out of the saddle position without too much transition in your body weight. So it's quite reflective of the length of the bike as well. And you'll see that seat tube angle on many other cross-country and also down-country bikes that don't need the radical steep seat angles that you expect on trail and enduro bikes. Now, as far as wheelbase and reach and things like that goes, you've got a 438mm chainstay out the back, which is a little bit longer than what we see on some other cross-country bikes, tending to go for the shorter approach for that whippier feel. But again, this bike is slightly longer. And you've got 4 sizes with different reach accordingly, varying from 406mm to 485. So by no means is it one of the longest bikes, but it definitely looks like one of the most fun bikes. The Evo platform runs 110mm travel at the rear, which you might argue 10mm over the regular one, what's the difference? But actually, it will feel quite different. And it's also far more suitable to run the 120mm travel fork on the front that really does step it up in terms of performance in more aggressive terrain. I mean, some of the models available in a range are absolutely beautiful, including this sandy looking beast. But the price ranges also accordingly do vary immensely. So there's 8 models available in the Evo, starting at 3,800 quid here in the UK, and topping out with that sandy one at 11,750 quid. There's also some pretty special paint jobs available on frame sets as well. I've got to say, the Evo series and what Specialized do, I really like it. I think it's a great looking bike. Next up is the Canyon Lux Trail. Now, the Lux is their proven cross-country race full suspension platform using a single pivot design with a rocker linkage there driving the shock on the top tube, and a flex stays between the seat and chain stays there to almost act as another pivot point, but lacking the weight associated with those pivots. Now, it's a very effective platform, super lightweight, but just with more intention towards a more aggressive terrain. So they're still making the regular Lux and the Lux Trail, which is a little bit of an unusual name, having trail on there, because it's not a trail bike. This is still a cross-country race bike. This model just has slightly longer and slightly more aggressive geometry. Let's have a look at some of the geometry on this bike. There's 4 sizes available. The head tube angle on there is 67.5, so not quite as aggressive as you see on some other models of bike, but this is still intended as a race bike. Don't forget that. 74.5 degree seat angle, fairly common there for most cross-country bikes. There's 4 sizes, as I said, with reach varying from 440 up to 500mm, so quite a lot more roomy than what we've seen from the Specialized bike, which arguably has a bit more of a rowdy head angle on there. Chainstay's 435mm, so a little bit more agile and responsive feeling on the rear of the Canyon here, but 2 very different bikes between them. There's 4 models available, starting at $3,199 and topping out with this model at $5,649. Really making it a bit more of a bargain compared to the Specialized, actually, but that's how the way the Canyon work with their bikes. As I say, so 110mm travel on the rear, 120 on the front, and it's still intended as a race bike, but just offering a bit more freedom when it comes to tackling aggressive terrain. Smart looking bike, that's for sure. Santa Cruz Blur. Now there's actually 2 models here. There's the XC and there's the TR model. So take that as cross country and trail between the 2. As we're seeing with many brands start to offer just a little bit more with their cross country bikes. Now the biggest thing to report on the Santa Cruz is they've lost the VPP on this particular bike. Now that's not to suggest the VPP isn't a good system, it's a brilliant system. However, there's a lot going on and a lot of components in the rear end of a bike, bearings, linkages, pivots, all that stuff, it weighs. And they've lost 300 grams off the back end of the bike compared to the previous generation of the Blur by approaching it with this system, which shares a similar suspension style to a lot of other very popular high-end race bikes like the Canyon Lux. So it's got a single pivot design, it's got flex on the chainstay and seat stays there, and it's got like a linkage driving that shock at the rear end. It's the lightest and most efficient way of making a suspension system that is very active and very, very efficient when you're pedaling. And they've absolutely nailed it with this design. Now there's actually 2 different models, as I said, the XC and the TR, with different amounts of travel on them. So the XC has 100mm travel and the TR has 115mm. So accordingly, you would run 120mm travel fork on the 115 and you'd run 100mm travel fork on the 100. And it gives racers both the freedom of having an out and out lightweight or something more suitable for multi-day stage races like the Cape Epic or even things like the BC bike race, or just for shredding on your local trails. Now there's 4 sizes available here. I'm going to base the sizing on the TR model because I think that's probably the more exciting bike right now. And bearing in mind that they're based on the same frame, but they have different shock configurations. So actually the TR model is slightly shorter on this basis. If you want a longer bike, you go for the shorter travel one. A bit strange, but that works there because it tilts back slightly. So you've got 67.1 degree head angle on there. So it's slack, it's not crazy slack, but I think that's a really good number for a cross-country bike. 75 degree seat angle, so fairly reflective of where everyone else is at the moment. Reach that varies from 412 up to 483. As I say, there's slightly more reach available if you went for the 100mm travel option with slightly less, and it goes up to 495mm. So it's just a result of the frame being pitched forward very slightly differently. Chainstay changes from 430 to 438mm, size specific on the bikes there. There's 5 models starting at $5,099 and topping out at $9,899. I've got to say, it's really nice that Santa Cruz have really taken cross-country seriously by bringing out a super lightweight category bike, and I think this is a really, really sought-after XC race bike. Next up is the Spark RC SL Evo. A bit of a mouthful there, but look at the thing. It is just staggeringly beautiful. Such a simple looking frame there with a hidden shock, but also it is pitched heavily towards the more aggressive stance that cross-country racing has taken. That's a bold move there from Scott Cycles. Now you probably noticed that you can't see a shock anywhere on this bike. It's because it's housed on the inside of the frame there, just above the bottom bracket shell and in front of the seat tube there. Super, super intelligent design. I mean, why would you not choose to house something on the inside of the frame on a style of bike that arguably once set up, you don't really make any adjustments to the shock. It gives plenty of room in the front triangle there for water bottles and stuff, and it just looks so elegant. A really devilishly simple approach as well. On that linkage that moves there just to the rear of the seat tube that you can see, there's essentially a little spur that compresses a shock on the inside. It's actually super simple. One of those things you'd look at and think, why has no one else done this before? Brilliant, brilliant piece of design. Now there's 120mm travel on the rear, 120 on the front, which could arguably push this up into that downcountry class, but they do offer a trail spec'd version with slightly stronger components on. This is their race bike still with 120mm travel, and they get to this by having a slightly different approach to everyone else. Now, Scott in the past are famous for having alternative rear suspension designs and being able to switch between different systems on them. And this one, using the Twin Lock 2 system, is no different. So there's 3 settings on the remote control from the handlebars. The open setting, or descend, gives you the full 120mm of travel, ideal for smashing through the rough stuff. In the mid setting, which they call traction, it gives you 80mm of travel, and it firms up the feeling of the suspension as well, and also just keeps the bottom bracket that bit higher, so it makes the bike that bit better for climbing and really punching the power down. And of course, all the way through on the lever, and you can lock out the rear end there. A super capable bike, and a really cool approach from Scott. Now, there's 4 sizes available, small through to extra large, and the geometry, it's not super radical, but it really suits what the bike is doing. So you've got a 67.2 degree head angle up the front there, 75.9 up to 76.9 degree seat angle, so slightly steeper than what we're seeing on some of the other bikes, but that's reflective of more travel on the rear end really. And it's size specific, it just varied there. Reach from 411 to 501mm, so it's actually quite a roomy bike. 437.5mm chainstays on the back there as well, so a good stable approach. And all things considered, given what that bike is capable of, what we've seen that bike capable of already, I'd say that is not only one of the best looking bikes I've ever seen, it's definitely the best looking cross-country bike I've currently seen, and going to be one of the best performing as well. That is a super bike, I reckon. So there's 10 models available, starting at $3,299, and yes, that is a lot of money, but it's still a good entrance point into the high-end world of cross-country racing, and all the way up to $11,999 for the top-end, like no-holds-barred race model. Wow, what a bike. Now we're going to look at the Trek Top Fuel, which has actually been a very consistent performer over the years in the cross-country category, but this time it's a little bit different. I think that is thanks to that Super Caliber model, which bridges between hardtails and full suspension that they also released a little while back. So in case you're wondering, the Super Caliber is the one that's got the isostrut shock. So essentially the shock is kind of like an intrinsic part of the frame. It's there structurally, and that offers 60mm travel, but all the benefits of an ultralight hardtail, just taking a bit of the sting out there. So what they've done is they've bumped up the Top Fuel now, up to 120mm travel on the rear, and it's actually got 130mm travel on the front. So this bike actually crosses paths here. This could almost bump into the trail category, but you've got the benefit of being a cross-country weight. And as far as the team racers go, they've got the choice then of something a bit heavier hitting for the really rougher courses or the multi-day events, or they can go the other way with the isostrut-equipped Super Caliber. But let's focus on the Top Fuel here, because I think this is probably the most versatile looking bike in this category. So as I said, 120mm travel out back, 130 up front, and it's using Trek's ABP system. So essentially it's a single pivot bike with a linkage to drive the shock, but it has a pivot on the rear wheel axle known as the active braking pivot. 6 sizes available as well in this. So if you're really small or you're really tall, this could well be the ideal bike in this category for you to have a look at. And there's a lot of models too, we'll reference that in a minute. Now, geometry is also, as you'd imagine, with a 130mm fork and a 120 rear end, a little bit more on the aggressive side. So the head angle, 65.5 to 66 degrees is adjustable between models here. So that's pretty flipping slack for a cross-country bike. 76.4 degree seat angle, so quite steep, but again, reflective of the amount of travel on the front there. You kind of need that to keep in the right position. Reach for the extra small is down to 415mm, so that's a really compact little bike, running on 29-inch wheels there. Up to 499 on the extra large, so really they're catering for most size riders there. Chainstay is 435mm, and it's also got a neat little extra on the down tube there under the bottle cage. I think you use the bottle cage to remove it. They've got a cover, and in there you can stash your inner tubes, your CO2 cartridges, you know, sort of your race tools, the stuff that you don't necessarily just want to have out spoiling the look of your bike. I mean, you've got the tubes, why not use them? Smart design. Now, this is the craziest thing about the Trek. I was saying about it being a versatile bike with the amount of sizing available, the amount of models and price points as well. So there's 17 models, 17. I couldn't believe that when I looked through the website. 17 models starting at $2,550 and going all the way up to a dizzying $11,200. So really, they are catering for everyone in that category, and you get the same excellent frame layout on all of them. Well, they are the bikes that have really been doing it for us here at GMBN and GMBN Tech. I'm sure there's going to be other worthy contenders that you're you think that should be in there, or maybe you disagree with some of our choices. Let us know in the comments underneath. We'd love to know from you, and we'll see you in the next video. See you later.